My name is Jami Wallace. I'm 33 years old. And this is the story of how I died one night, only to come back stronger than I ever imagined. The storm didn't just come that night. It roared, it screamed. It felt like nature itself wanted to strip me bare. I stood under the skeletal shell of a gas station canopy on Highway 74, rain slicing through the air like glass, lightning flickering across the sky like the universe was watching and keeping receipts. My heels were soaked through. My silk dress clung to me like regret. My mascara ran down my cheeks, a ruined painting of the woman I used to be. Travis had left me there, no umbrella, no coat, not even a goodbye kiss. Just that cold, robotic line that kept echoing in my head like a curse: I need space. I can't take it anymore. And just like that, the man I had once believed was my future turned and walked into the night. His SUV disappeared into the darkness, his taillights like two red eyes watching me collapse. That dinner was supposed to be the start of something new. A fresh chapter. He had booked the most expensive steakhouse in Charlotte. Told me to wear the blue dress he liked. I'd curled my hair, put on the heels he picked out for our anniversary 3 years ago, and smiled through the tension. But all that was a lie. A cruel setup. When I checked our joint bank account under the flickering neon light of that gas station, I nearly dropped my phone. $38. Just hours ago, we had over $2,000. My fingers trembled as I scrolled. $800 withdrawn just after 4. That was when he stepped away from the shoe store, claiming work was calling. Then 2 more withdrawals, $700 here, $600 there, each one chipping away at our shared life. My life. He hadn't just left me in a storm. He'd looted everything and vanished. I walked into the gas station, more like floated, really. I barely felt my legs. The cold air inside slapped me in the face, like the world didn't want to let me forget I was now alone. The kid behind the counter looked up, half-chewed gum frozen in his mouth. "You all right, ma'am?" he asked, eyes full of that kind of fear people have when they're not sure if they're witnessing a breakdown or the prologue to something darker. "I'm fine," I whispered. I wasn't. But I still said it. Because that's what women like me are trained to say. You smile, you endure, and you never cause a scene. I poured a burnt cup of gas station coffee I didn't even want. I just needed to hold something, anything. Needed to stay upright. Needed to not crumble right there on the floor. That's when the door opened. The bell above it jingled, and a gust of wind followed the man who entered. Tall. Hooded. Dripping wet. But there was something about the way he moved, calm, steady, grounded, that made the whole store go quiet. His eyes swept the room, then locked onto me. I recognized him instantly. David Hale. Travis had introduced him to me twice, once at a company fundraiser and once at a year-end holiday party. He was Travis's security consultant, brought on 4 sensitive transitions, whatever that meant. David had always stood off to the side, away from the noise, his eyes sharp, never missing a beat. Now he stood in front of me, soaked and silent. "Are you Jami Wallace?" he asked. I nodded slowly. "You okay?" A simple question. But it split something inside me. No one, absolutely no one, had asked me that all night. My throat tightened. "I'm fine," I lied again. It was barely audible. David didn't press. He just looked at me, then at the coffee machine, then back at me. "You shouldn't be here alone in a storm like this." "Where are you headed?" "North Pine," I said. "But I have no car." "And nothing." "I'll take you." I blinked. "What?" "You're not staying here. It's not safe. Let me get you home." And I should have said no. I should have said I'd call someone. But I had no one. And right then, something in me broke that was long overdue for breaking. "Okay." David handed a $5 to the clerk and got a coffee to go. Then he held the door for me like a man who wasn't asking for trust, but offering it. His truck was spotless. Warm. It smelled like leather and lavender oil, oddly enough. I shivered as the door closed behind me. We drove in silence for the first 10 minutes. The rain kept pounding the roof like fists. Then, without looking at me, David asked, "How long's he been like this?" I looked at him. "What do you mean?" "The way he treats you. The way he isolates you." My breath caught. "I've seen it before," David said, his eyes never leaving the road. "Guys like Travis? They don't start by yelling or hitting. They start by cutting you off, just a little at a time. Friends. Family. Money. Voice. Until the only version of you that exists is the one that lives through them." I turned toward the window, eyes blurring. "He said I didn't need to work," I whispered. Then I lost my bar license renewal date while waiting on his financial paperwork. Then my mom stopped visiting because he said it stressed me out. And I believed him. David's voice dropped to a low hum. "That's not love. That's captivity." I nodded, silent tears rolling down my cheeks. "You don't have to stay lost, Jami." And that's when it happened, right there in that truck, in the middle of a Carolina storm, in the presence of a man I barely knew but somehow trusted more than the one I married. I felt something shift inside me. Something ancient. Something raw. It wasn't rage. It was power. And for the first time in a long time, I let it rise. By the time David's truck rolled up to my front gate, the rain had softened, but the damage had been done. Not just to the streets or the sky, but to something inside me. Something that would never again go back to sleep. The lights in the house were still on. Of course they were. Travis had left them on as part of the illusion that this was still my home, my life, my marriage. But all it felt like now was a hollow museum of the woman I used to be. David walked me up to the door, said nothing, just waited until I was safely inside. Before I closed it behind me, I looked at him. "Thank you for seeing me." He nodded once. "Get some rest. And tomorrow, fight back." The door clicked shut, and I was alone. No, not alone. Free. The morning after felt like waking from a coma. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat in my kitchen robe, coffee untouched, staring at the marble countertops Travis said we absolutely had to have. I used to think that countertop meant we'd made it. Now I realized it was just stone. Cold and lifeless. Like him. I opened my laptop and stared at the blinking cursor for 20 minutes before I searched for her name. Charlotte Evans. We were best friends once. Law school roommates. I used to think she'd be my maid of honor. But after I got married, I let the calls go unanswered. The invitations unreturned. Travis said she was too ambitious, that she didn't respect boundaries. What he really meant was, she reminded me of who I used to be. I hit call on her number. "Jami," she answered after 3 rings, her voice filled with stunned warmth. "Oh my God, it's been years." I didn't waste a breath. "Charlotte. I need help. Legal help. Bad." The warmth in her voice dropped to full focus. "Tell me everything." I gave her the short version: storm, betrayal, empty bank accounts. I could practically hear her standing up from her desk. "Don't leave the house. Don't sign anything. I'll be there in an hour." She meant it. Exactly 1 hour later, Charlotte was on my doorstep, her blazer rain-speckled, briefcase in hand, her dark curls pulled into the same tight twist I remembered from the courtroom mock trials we used to dominate. She didn't say, "I told you so." She didn't even ask, "Why didn't you call sooner?" She just hugged me hard, then walked in like she owned the place. "You're not crazy," she said before I could speak. "You're not dramatic. You're not overreacting. You're just finally seeing it for what it is. She pulled out her laptop and a yellow legal pad. Tell me everything. Every detail, no matter how small. I talked. She typed. Everything poured out, the sudden withdrawals, the old fights over privacy, how Travis slowly disconnected me from my job, friends, even my therapist. The way he weaponized guilt. The dinners that felt like board meetings where only one person's opinion counted. The way he'd take calls at night and whisper in the hallway. Charlotte's fingers flew over the keys. When I finished, she leaned back, eyes like a hawk. Okay. First, we file an emergency motion to freeze all marital assets. Second, we hire a forensic accountant. Third, we file a restraining clause, he's not allowed to contact you directly. Everything goes through me now. I felt breath return to my lungs. But there's one more thing, she said, looking up. Do you still have access to the joint files? Email? Cloud storage? I nodded. He always said I should leave it to him, but I insisted on having the login. He thought it was cute. Charlotte grinned. Well, it's about to be tragic. We logged in. She showed me how to search metadata, hidden folders, even the backup archives. What we found made me physically ill. There was a draft divorce agreement. Backdated. With a forged version of my signature. There were emails to a brokerage firm negotiating liquidation of stocks I didn't even know we owned. There were scanned deeds, Arizona, Miami, even a mention of a transfer in the Cayman Islands. All hidden. All meant to be stolen. My hands trembled over the keyboard. He was preparing for this the whole time. Charlotte's voice dropped to a growl. He was preparing to erase you. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. And then, in a moment I'll never forget, I whispered, then let's erase him first. Charlotte reached into her bag, pulled out a thick manila folder. This is the name of a forensic accountant I trust. His name is Anderson. He's worked for the state attorney's office. He's the reason 3 executives are now in prison. I took it. When does he start? Already did. I sent him your name an hour ago. I knew it was bad. I just didn't know it was this bad. I exhaled, shaky but firm. I want everything back. And I want him to lose more than money. Charlotte gave a thin smile. Oh, honey. We're not just going after what's yours. We're going after everything he built on your back. We worked through the night. Every old receipt, tax document, insurance bill, Charlotte scanned and logged it. I was awake but fueled by fury and something new, focus. The next morning, I watched the sun rise from my living room window. No longer a prisoner. No longer a bystander. A warrior sharpening her blade. The morning of the court hearing felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, but for once, I wasn't the one about to fall. I wore a black suit, fitted, sharp. The kind Charlotte said makes people listen before you even speak. My hair was pulled back tight. No makeup, no soft colors. I wanted the judge to see what Travis never did, a woman who was done being small. Charlotte met me on the steps of the Wake County Courthouse. Her expression was unreadable. Confident. She carried a thick legal binder with tabs peeking out in red and yellow like warning lights. Ready? She asked. I nodded, though my legs felt like they were made of glass. Inside, the air was sterile and cold. Travis was already seated across the room with his lawyer, a man who looked like he billed by the minute and hadn't smiled since 1997. Travis looked exactly like the man who left me in that storm, impeccably dressed, polished, empty inside. His tie was blue, his hair perfectly groomed. But his eyes, they didn't meet mine. Not once. Charlotte leaned close and whispered, "They think you're walking in here broken." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. When the judge entered, the courtroom stood. Judge Diane Monroe, reputation so clean you could eat off it, known in the bar as the guillotine in pearls. Silver bun. Crisp voice. Piercing eyes. She sat and glanced over the docket. Charlotte rose first. Your Honor, we're filing an emergency motion to freeze all marital assets between Jami Wallace and Travis Wallace due to suspected financial misconduct, asset concealment, and forged documentation. She laid it out with surgical precision. The forged divorce documents. The offshore transfers. The shell companies. The timeline. The betrayal. Travis's lawyer stood and tried to wave it off as stress-related actions during a difficult marriage. He even had the gall to say, Mr. Wallace's emotional state caused a lapse in judgment. There was never malicious intent. Judge Monroe raised one eyebrow. He left his wife, without transportation or shelter, during an active weather warning, after withdrawing large sums from a joint account, and after initiating covert asset movement through a shell company? Travis's lawyer cleared his throat. Respectfully, Your Honor, Mr. Wallace believed his wife had resources of her own. Sit down, the judge said, voice flat. My heart thudded. I glanced at Travis. He looked stunned, like he'd expected to charm the system the same way he charmed investors and friends for years. Judge Monroe continued, the court finds credible evidence of financial manipulation and misconduct. Therefore, all marital assets are hereby frozen. Mrs. Wallace shall retain exclusive use of the marital residence pending further proceedings. Additionally, the court grants her temporary support in the amount of $2,000 per month. A pause. Then she added, this court takes allegations of financial fraud seriously. We will move swiftly. Charlotte and I exchanged a look. This was only the beginning, but it was a victory. As we left the courtroom, Travis reached out. Jami, wait. I stopped. Only because I wanted to see what lie he'd try to sell next. His voice dropped low. You don't have to do this. We can fix this, just talk to me. I laughed. Actually laughed. Talk to you? Like we did the night you drove off and left me to die in a storm? He winced. You want to fix something? Start by fixing your conscience. Oh wait. That'd require you to have one. I turned and walked out. Outside, the sun was trying to break through the clouds. Charlotte pulled off her sunglasses and turned to me. This isn't over. But you stood your ground. That's more than most people ever get to do. I nodded. Now we make sure he pays. 3 days later, Anderson, Charlotte's forensic accountant, called with news. It wasn't just bad. It was stunning. Travis had hidden over $11 million. Offshore accounts, fake company names, real estate under trusts and proxies. The whole setup was a labyrinth. But Anderson had cracked it, page by page. Charlotte and I sat across from him in her office, file folders spread out like an autopsy table. This one here, Anderson said, pointing to a series of documents, is a shell company registered in Delaware. Named Westlake Solutions. Controlled by Travis but owned on paper by a Michael Reinhold, a fictitious name. He flipped to the next section. Westlake purchased a 4-bedroom villa in Arizona. Fully paid in cash. But here's where it gets interesting, insurance payments were billed to your joint account. I stared, mouth dry. He used my own money to insure the house he was planning to leave me for? Precisely. The next page was worse. A condo in Miami. Then a luxury car. Then a storage unit filled with business supplies that turned out to be priceless art. He hadn't just robbed me. He'd been staging a new life. One I didn't exist in. And the cherry on top? A draft prenup. Backdated. With my forged signature. In a folder labeled, Exit Plan. Charlotte looked at me, voice sharp. He planned this for at least 2 years, Jami. You were never meant to survive the storm. Financially or emotionally. I clenched my fists. Then let's bury him in the truth. Charlotte stood. We're taking this to the judge. We're filing for fraud, forgery, and requesting punitive damages. And just before we left the office, Anderson handed me one final document. Jami, you should see this. He also created a fake Gmail account under your name. It appears he was preparing to stage emails making you look unhinged. Paranoid. It's textbook gaslighting, designed to discredit you in case you went public. My vision blurred with rage. But rage wasn't enough anymore. I wanted justice. And I was going to get it. They say courtrooms are where justice is served. But let me tell you the truth, justice doesn't just show up because you're right. You have to drag it out, kicking and screaming, and make it look the enemy in the eye. It was raining again the day we returned to court. Not like the storm that nearly drowned me. This one was quieter. Colder. Like a warning whispered in the wind. Travis was already inside. His lawyer's suit looked even more expensive than before, but the confidence they carried last time was gone. Now, they looked like people bracing for impact. And they should have been. Charlotte and I entered with a stack of documents so thick it needed its own rolling briefcase. Every page in that binder was a nail in the coffin of Travis's lies, courtesy of Anderson, the forensic accountant who uncovered $11 million in stolen assets, hidden properties, and a fraudulent paper trail that would make a mob boss proud. Judge Monroe didn't waste time. We are here today to address the amended motion filed by Mrs. Wallace's counsel, she said, flipping through the documents before her. This includes accusations of financial fraud, offshore account concealment, and forgery of legal documents. Mrs. Wallace, do you swear that the evidence provided to this court is accurate and true to the best of your knowledge? I stood. Voice steady. I do. Charlotte rose like a warrior armed with paper blades. She walked the court through everything, the shell companies, the transfers to the Cayman Islands, the secret real estate investments paid through marital funds, the draft prenuptial agreement Travis forged and stored under the sickening file name exit plan. And then she dropped the final piece. The fake Gmail account. The account was created using the victim's name, Your Honor, Charlotte said, and was filled with emails portraying Mrs. Wallace as unstable, paranoid, and dangerous. These were not sent, but saved, as if to establish a false digital trail. Had we not acted quickly, we believe Mr. Wallace intended to use these to influence divorce proceedings and character assessments. Judge Monroe didn't speak for a long moment. When she finally did, her voice was sharp and precise. Mr. Wallace, do you dispute the authenticity of these claims? Travis stood slowly. For the first time since this all began, I saw cracks in his facade. His once confident tone was replaced by something brittle. I made mistakes, he said. But I never meant to hurt Jami. I was overwhelmed. The business was failing, and I panicked. Charlotte didn't even blink. So you panicked and forged a divorce agreement? Stole $11 million? Created false documents? And tried to fabricate a breakdown to make my client appear unfit? Travis opened his mouth. Then shut it. Because there was no excuse left. Judge Monroe spoke again. The court finds overwhelming evidence that Mr. Wallace engaged in premeditated asset concealment, fraud, and intentional deception. As such, I am issuing the following orders. My breath froze. Mrs. Wallace is granted 60% of all identified marital assets. This includes sole ownership of the home at North Pine, liquidated value of the shell companies, and the real estate assets in Arizona and Florida. Additionally, the court awards $500,000 in punitive damages for forgery and emotional distress. Mr. Wallace is responsible for all legal costs. Gasps fluttered in the courtroom like the flutter of wings. I looked over at Travis. His face had gone pale. The man who used to decide where I went, what I wore, how I lived, was now watching it all crumble. I didn't smile. Not out of mercy. Out of clarity. This wasn't about revenge. This was about reclaiming what I had given away, my voice. As we walked out of the courtroom, Charlotte squeezed my arm. We won. But I didn't say anything. Because something inside me knew it wasn't over. Not yet. It happened 3 nights later. I was sitting in my living room, sipping tea, watching the rain quietly bead down the glass when the doorbell rang. I opened it cautiously. No one was there. Just an envelope on the doorstep. No return address. No stamp. Inside was a single photo, Travis, standing in front of a crumbling building, what looked like a rundown property somewhere in Georgia. His eyes were hollow. His posture defeated. On the back of the photo, scrawled in ink. You were never supposed to win. I stared at the words for a long time. Not because they scared me, but because they confirmed everything I had always suspected. He didn't just want to leave me. He wanted to erase me. But the photo wasn't a threat. It was a confession. A monument to his failure. I folded it neatly and slid it into a file I labeled closed. And then I turned off the porch light, locked the door, and poured myself another cup of tea. I didn't sleep much after that envelope arrived. Not because I was scared, those days were behind me. I didn't feel fear anymore when I saw Travis's name or thought of his voice. I felt something deeper, something stronger. Resolve. The storm had passed. The money was recovered. The court had ruled. And yet, I still woke up each morning feeling like the real work was just beginning. Because it wasn't enough to win in court. I had to make sure no woman ever went through what I did. Not alone. Not helpless. That's when the idea took hold of me like a slow, rising tide. At first it was just a thought, a whisper in the back of my mind as I washed dishes or walked past the locked office that once belonged to Travis. But the more I thought about it, the more it burned. A place. A refuge. A start-over center for women like me. I called it Beacon Haven. I told Charlotte first. She came by on a Saturday morning, still in her weekend jeans, hair up in a bun, coffee in each hand. You serious? She asked, eyebrows raised. Completely. Charlotte leaned back on the porch rail and looked out across the street. You've already been through hell, Jami. Starting a non-profit is no joke. The legal work alone is insane. I'm not afraid of hard work anymore, I said. And I won't sit on everything I've learned like it was just about me. I want to use what I went through to help someone else walk out of their own storm. Charlotte nodded slowly. Then let's do it right. By the end of that week, we'd filed the paperwork. By the end of the month, we had a small board of 4 women, including me, Charlotte, and 2 others we brought on, one a financial counselor, the other a licensed therapist who had worked with survivors of domestic financial abuse. I reached out to my cousin Matt, who I hadn't spoken to in almost 3 years. Travis said he was too weird, too tech-obsessed, and always had a way of making me look small. What he really meant was, Matt saw through him. When I told Matt everything, he drove 2 hours from Durham without blinking and brought his laptop. I'll build you a secure site, he said. Encrypted backend. No traces. You want women to feel safe? Start with a system that can't be hacked. David Hale, the man who found me standing in the storm that night, offered his help too. He came over with 2 cups of coffee and a binder under his arm. This is a safety plan draft, panic protocols, anonymous reporting systems, surveillance countermeasures for abusive stalkers. I've seen too many guys who can't let go. I took the binder and looked him in the eye. You've helped me more than you know. David gave a small smile. You didn't need help, Jami. You needed a mirror. We found a small office in the historic district of Raleigh, just 2 blocks from the courthouse. It wasn't fancy, but it had brick walls, big windows, and space for us to grow. I painted the front door olive green. The color of healing. Of rebirth. Of peace. Inside, we kept it simple. No framed certificates, no politics. Just one piece of art on the wall, a print of a woman walking through a rainstorm, umbrella in hand, sun peeking over the horizon. Every detail was intentional. Every nail we drove into the wall, every name we entered into the system, it felt like a piece of the cage I used to live in falling to the ground. Within weeks, the first woman walked in. Her name was Sheila. She was 41, an accountant, mother of 2. Her husband had taken control of their finances, used her name for a business loan, and now, she was facing foreclosure. She cried when we told her we believed her. We found her a pro bono attorney. Charlotte helped her file for asset protection. Matt secured her data. David met with her and gave her a step-by-step plan for staying safe. And that's when I realized, this wasn't just a passion project. This was war. And we were building an army of survivors. Word spread faster than we expected. We had to create a waiting list. We brought on volunteers. Former clients came back, not for help, but to help. And the moment that sealed it all was this. A young woman, maybe 25, with hollow eyes and bruises half hidden under her hoodie, walked through our doors one afternoon. I sat with her in the intake room, just the two of us. She looked at me and whispered, I thought I was crazy. I thought I was overreacting. I thought it was my fault. I leaned in, heart pounding, and said, so did I. She stared at me. But you're okay now. No, I told her. I'm not just okay. I'm free. She cried. And I let her. Because that was the point of Beacon Haven. Not just to rescue. To rebuild. Beacon Haven was thriving. The quiet walls of our little office buzzed daily with stories, some devastating, others powerful. Women came in with hollow eyes and left with plans, with names of lawyers, safe shelter addresses, and sometimes, just the strength to stand up again. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged somewhere. Like I mattered. But peace is never permanent when someone like Travis is still breathing. It started with a phone call Charlotte intercepted. Blocked number. No message. But it pinged off a tower in Atlanta, she said, frowning. Could be nothing. It wasn't. 2 days later, our website glitched. Matt texted me at midnight. You get a weird admin alert? Somebody tried to spoof our contact form. David came over the next day and ran diagnostics. IP traces back to a fake address. This wasn't just someone trolling you, Jami. They were trying to plant something in the system. A virus. Maybe even a tracking bug. I knew immediately who it was. Only one person had that kind of malice wrapped in charm. Only one person would dare try to destroy something I'd built out of my pain. Travis. David leaned forward, calm but unblinking. He's spiraling. He's lost his fortune, his friends, his respect. But a man like that? He can live without money. What he can't live without is control. Charlotte agreed. He can't attack you in court anymore. Can't attack you financially. So now he's trying to poison your purpose. I sat in the office late that night, alone under the soft lamplight, the silence around me thick like fog. That photo from the envelope months ago sat in a file drawer, buried but not forgotten. His words echoed like poison on repeat. You were never supposed to win. But I had. And it terrified him. So now, he was trying to rewrite the ending. The next morning, I filed a formal injunction through Charlotte, requesting a cyber investigation into attempted digital harassment and tampering. With David's evidence, and Matt's secure logs, the judge granted us immediate digital protection status and a court-monitored firewall system. It wasn't just about preventing access anymore. It was about drawing the line in steel. And then we went further. We held a press conference. It wasn't flashy. No media frenzy. Just one reporter from a respected local station, one camera, and my voice. I told my story, not just the storm, not just the courtroom victory, but the purpose I built from the ashes. I don't share this to get pity, I said into the mic, standing in front of the Beacon Haven sign. I share this because there are women out there right now being told they're overreacting. That they're ungrateful. That they're crazy. And I want them to know they're not. The interview aired that night. It spread like wildfire. Within 48 hours, we had 3 times the inquiries. 10 new donors. And a dozen women who said, I saw you on TV, and I knew I had to find you. The following weekend, I received another envelope on my porch. Unmarked. Unsealed. Inside? A single torn piece of newspaper. It was the article about the Beacon Haven story. Scrawled in black ink across the top. You really want to make this public? You'll regret it. David looked at it and scoffed. Classic predator behavior. Threaten her when he loses the leash. Charlotte pressed charges the next morning, harassment and intimidation of a non-profit entity, cyber tampering, and violation of court boundaries. But what Travis didn't know was that his fake Gmail activity had remained dormant, but traceable. The FBI had opened a small file on him weeks ago. Charlotte had quietly reported the forgery, and now, with this new string of harassment, they were actively reviewing the case. His last act of sabotage backfired. Instead of silencing me, he'd triggered a federal investigation. And when Charlotte told me the agent handling the case had already subpoenaed his financial backup drives, I smiled for the first time that week. Not because I wanted him in prison, though I wouldn't lose sleep if he ended up there. But because the truth, the full truth, would finally see daylight. Beacon Haven wasn't just a refuge now. It was a fortress. The day Travis finally stood before a federal judge, the skies were clear. Not a cloud in sight. No rain. No storm. Just light. I wasn't required to be there. But I showed up anyway. Not for him. For me. For closure. He was thinner now. Paler. Dressed in a suit that looked like it didn't quite fit anymore. Maybe it was borrowed. Maybe it was the last decent thing he owned. He didn't look at me as he entered the courtroom, hands clenched behind his back. The charges were formal: attempted cyber fraud, harassment of a non-profit institution, forged federal documentation, and obstruction of justice, stemming from the forged prenup and fake emails Charlotte had exposed. The FBI found backup cloud drives he never knew he left active. Dozens of files, including drafts of identity theft forms, burner SIM logs, and spreadsheets mapping out fake donations meant to be funneled into an account registered in the Cayman Islands, again, under my name. He was meticulous in his evil. But I had been even more meticulous in my fight back. The trial didn't last long. His lawyer tried to claim emotional instability, business pressure, mental exhaustion. But the court didn't buy it. The judge looked over the papers for a long moment. Then turned to Travis and said, "You didn't just try to destroy your wife. You tried to erase a human being, forge her name, steal her voice, and rewrite reality to protect your image. And now, the world sees you clearly." The gavel fell like thunder. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing, 6 years in federal prison, with no chance of early parole for the first 3. As they escorted him out, he glanced at me. And for once, I didn't see power or control in his eyes. I saw something far more satisfying. Insignificance. 3 months later, Beacon Haven opened its second location, a modest space in Durham with sunlit windows, a resource library, and 6 computers donated by a local tech company that heard our story and wanted to help. I stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony with Charlotte beside me and David just behind, arms crossed like he always did when things felt right. The crowd applauded as we opened the doors. Women filtered in. Some in tears. Some in quiet, shaken silence. Some holding the hands of daughters they swore to protect better than anyone ever protected them. That night, back at the house on North Pine, I sat on the porch as the wind rustled through the trees. No thunder. Just a breeze. David joined me, setting down 2 glasses of tea. "You ever think he'll try again?" he asked, not looking at me. "Probably," I said. "Men like him don't know how to lose." David nodded. "But now you know how to win." I smiled. "I don't need revenge anymore. He's already buried himself in truth." We clinked our glasses. Charlotte arrived a few minutes later, kicking off her heels with a sigh. "Guess what? The state bar is using your case to update legal training on financial abuse in marriages. You're becoming an example." "I'll take it," I said, laughing gently. "If it helps just one woman leave earlier than I did, it's worth it." Matt texted later that night, "Site traffic tripled. And we just got our first call from a woman in Alabama. She said she heard about you from a woman in Ohio." Words spreading. I turned off my phone and stepped into my bedroom. The same bedroom where Travis once convinced me to shrink so he could shine. Now it was mine again. Fully. The walls were painted a soft cream, the old bed frame replaced with warm cherry wood. On the nightstand sat the only photo I kept from the stormy chapter of my life, me, standing in front of Beacon Haven's first office, smiling through tired eyes, holding the hand of a woman who had just walked in for help. Sometimes, I still see his tail lights in my dreams, fading into the storm. But I always wake up in sunlight now. Because the thing about being left to die, is that when you survive, you don't just live. You rise. You lead. You build something no one can take from you. And if you're lucky, you become someone others can follow through the dark. They say revenge is sweet. But I've learned something deeper: justice is peace. And peace, earned through fire and flood, tastes better than any vengeance ever could. My name is Jami Wallace. My husband left me to die in the storm after stealing everything I had. But I took it all back. And more. If you found strength in Jami's journey, share this story. Someone out there might be living in silence right now, thinking they're alone. They're not. Subscribe to Revenge Echoes for more powerful stories that turn pain into power and silence into justice. Leave a comment below. What would you say to the person who once tried to break you?